say, Alex. It's that constant drizzle. So, camping well.
So I'm back in Wales again, and I'm hanging out with Nick Westermann in his workshop, and we decided to do another film on how to sharpen his gouges.
So the plan is we're going to follow the same format as the last video. I'm going to spend quite a lot of time explaining the edge geometry and the form of a gouge, because to really be able to sharpen it well, you need to understand how it works. Okay, so I wanted to start off touching on the history of this tool. It's very popular now, in no great part due to Alex's use of it in making his Gouges, which has turned out to be very well suited for him because of its reach. However, this is an early example, one I made in 2010 before I knew of Alex, and I'm not sure if it's before you were making Gouges, but it must be similar time.
Probably around that time,
yes.
yeah.
But so this is an early version I made, and at the time there really wasn't anything like this at all. Nobody else was making versions of these. You could get the extreme dogleg version, or trug runners as they were known, or you could get either a straight gouge or a curved gouge, but it only had one bend in it. So I decided to make a version like this, which was a midway point between the extreme offset of a dogleg, which makes them quite difficult to use, and the curved gouge, which is easy to use, but hasn't got the reach. So that was some of the thinking behind the Swan neck. And we'll just have a look at how these two work in the wood.
When I'm carving Gouges or small bowls with a straight gouge, I always run into this problem where I'm trying to carve the wall and I end up bottoming out here because of the nature of the tool. So then I'd have to switch to a dogleg gouge, which is kind of an awkward tool in my opinion. And that's really a one-trick pony because that's what you would use to clear out the bottom of this. So really, in my philosophy, I don't see the point of having a whole bunch of tools, and the beauty behind Nick's design is that you can actually clear this whole thing in one shot. From the top of the bowl, through the bottom, and almost up the other side sometimes, depending on the diameter of your top rim. But you can see by this shape, it kind of combines both tools really, and it's pretty much one of a kind. It's a pretty graceful tool, and it's not just a finishing tool. You can rough out some really huge chunks of wood. So I'll grab some wood chips to show you that. So not only can you get very nice, wispy, thin, almost see-through chips for finishing, but when you're doing roughing, you can get really, really thick cuts, which is great. A normal gouge probably couldn't do without prying or getting chatter, but this is a smooth chip. So that was a big game changer when I started carving my Gouges and helping Nick prototype these tools back in 2013.
Right, so the first thing we're going to look at is a straight gouge and how that cuts. The bevel isn't dead flat, so it will allow some sort of scooping action. So you can come in, and it will actually come in and come out pretty well. The issue is that as you get deeper, you reach a point, you can see now actually that it's starting to bottom out, and at this point here, it's not actually making a nice cut. You can see that we've got a chatter marks here. Whereas with the signet gouge, which has got a curve on it, as I was saying with the spoon knife, the shape of the bevel dictates the shape of the cut. I can come in here, I can come down, and I can come out. In the smooth cut, I can come all the way around. Like this. I can even come out of the cut. If we carry on going deeper, I won't do that, but if we were to carry on going deeper like this, you can see even this deep, it can still come out of the cut here. I can still, this is about the limit of it, but I can still come all the way out. But in reality, you wouldn't come all the way out, you'd come in from the other side. But just, whereas if we're on the, if we move to the straight gouge, I can come down the face here and it will still cut all right. But at this point, it's bottoming out now. I don't even get to the centre and its reach is bottoming out. You can see we've got all the chatter here, so you can see how the depth it will reach is very limited by the fact that it's straight. So that's the first part of the action of the swan neck gouge, or this is the signet, the smaller version, is this first curve here.
Okay, so just going to talk a little bit more about the shape. So this is the final swan neck shape. I said the earlier one was an example which I made, one of the first few which I made, but this is the shape I've settled on. The more offset you have, the greater reach you have, but the more difficult it is to use the tool. It fights you when you're pushing. If it's not in line, it's kicking out all the time. So this seems to be a nice compromise. And I've settled on this, as I say, I called it a swan neck because it's much more graceful than a dog leg. So this shape was pretty much set by me. The edge geometry, however, has been largely influenced by an article I read on in Woodcarving magazine by Michael Painter, and he was talking about tracery chisels which are used in ecclesiastical carvings. And that's, although they're used in a slightly different way, the edge geometry they're talking about, he was talking about in the article, I applied to these, and this really helped to make these tools work well. And one of the things is that it's not flat all the way across, is that there's a slight curve across the top face. And this curve is related to the curve which goes this way, so there's some relationship between that. You don't want the corners knocked away too greatly, or else it's for the inner tracery chisel. I actually want them quite crisp because I sometimes use the corners to refine something. Whereas if you're carving a bowl, which is what this is aimed at, you don't really want the corners to dig in. But conversely, if they're rolled away too sharply, I think it reduces the actual usefulness of the tool because the cutting edge is much shorter effectively because you can't use the corners. But a bit of curve definitely helps to stop the corners digging in. So that's one aspect. The other thing which I touched on, well, I didn't touch on it, I went on in great length in the sharpening video we first made, was how the bevel form influences the cut. And that's exactly the same thing. This is a blade which is made for carving curved bowls, curved surfaces. So it's a curved bevel. It is, however, although it's a curved bevel, I have got a secondary bevel which are actually used as a guide for sharpening. So one of the things about this tool is it's different to the spoon blades I was talking about, where we did the sharpening on the inside and left the outside alone. On these, to a large extent, the outside is the easy one to hit, so we can do most of our sharpening on the outside and just touch the inside because this is more difficult this time. But the concept is the same, is that you've got curved bevel guiding the cut. So that's the first part. Okay, so we're going to talk about how the inside bevel, which generally we won't touch, but because it's difficult to touch, if anybody's had this and had a go at sharpening on the inside, they might have rounded it off, and we certainly don't want any rounding. This bevel actually on the inside is obviously curved in this plane, but it also curves this way, so it's like a ball. So we've got these felts for sharpening which are curved, so we've got a curve which roughly matches this curve, but obviously the rounding of the wheel matches the curve here. So this is what we're going to use to, this is a bit small, this one has been used too many times, but that one's a very good fit. So that's what we're going to use to clean up that. Generally though, you don't really need to do much of this, because once it's been polished you can just sharpen from the outside, and we just touch up, just polish off the burr, which is sort of reverse of what we did on the spoon blade. But that's the whole idea with the sharpening, I think, is just to do whichever side is easiest, concentrate on that and leave the other side alone, rather than do the difficult parts for the sake of it. But if it needs doing, if you have got a secondary bevel on the inside, it needs to be ground off. And so I've got these wheels which I can use to grind off an inside bevel. So obviously it's easier to, it's on here. It's easier if you've got a bench grinder to do this, but I'm not going to show you on my big bench grinder polisher, because not everybody's got one. You can do it with a cordless, most people have a cordless, or you could use a power drill. So there's different attachments you can use. You can get these, something with a proper tapered thread on it, but you can actually use, this is just an 8mm bolt. And it will, it's not going to thread on and off indefinitely, but you can just thread it straight onto an 8mm bolt. 5/16, I think it is in American.
Okay.
Although,
We always make it difficult.
Yes, I think it's 11/52 to be precise, but I don't know if you actually can get those. Yes, I'd like to look that up actually, because I spent ages. So I shouldn't cut it there. I wrote it down on here. No, 1754. That's it.
1754. Correction.
1754, yes.
Official correction.
Official correction. 1754 is 7.996mm, which is close enough. So, right then. So we've got this felt wheel with some abrasive bonded on, and what we want to do now is grind the inside face. So we've got one here which is part ground, but needs a bit more work on it. So it's very hard to see where you've hit. So the best thing is just to, no point, you could colour the whole thing in, but if you just catch it like this. I suppose I should be wearing safety glasses, but this does not throw off sparks, it goes relatively slowly. Main thing is to make sure the wheel's going away from you, so any sparks or anything is going this way. Well, not just because of that, it's got to be going away from the edge, but you wouldn't want to do it like this, so it's going away from the edge and then firing it. You might as well.
Right. And also because you damage the wheel and your edge.
Yes,
cutting into it.
Oh yes, yeah, no, that's
Against
amazing.
each other.
Yes, he wants to be running away, yes. It'd be easier if this was in a vice, but I'm just showing you the most difficult version of it, and any other version you do will be. So, this is on high speed, but it's not very fast. Not very fast. And I won't talk over it, but so I'm going to put it on, check what I'm doing. If I'm removing the black, I'm removing the right bit. And you can see there, I've just hit the middle actually, because this wheel is a slightly smaller diameter than the grind of this. We don't have to match it up perfectly, but as long as we haven't got a secondary bevel, we're fine. So I'm just going to tip it up a bit more to reach there. And it's always worth working up slowly until you hit the edge, rather than hit the edge and round it, because that's precise, because then you've got a whole load more metal to remove. But if you work gradually up, just tipping up until you hit. And you probably only ever need to do this once with a high grip wheel, because it's unlikely you're going to damage it enough again to need that. I'll show you can do it with a bolt. And then this is a much finer grit. This is the finishing grit, the finishing grinding grit. So again, to be safe, with practice you might be able to see the change in scratch pattern, but if I mark it up again, I just know where I'm hitting. And this does take a bit of practice, but to be fair, I've never actually done it this way before. I've always used my grinder, and it's coming fairly naturally quite quickly. So again, up to speed. Okay, yeah, so I've hit that 320, I can now feel a slight burr on this face, which is good because it means I've hit the edge. So that's the inside ground anyway.
I think this method's actually a great way to do it because not everybody has like a bench grinder or like, you know, heavy duty equipment. And when I was on the road, all I could take with me was a power drill, or some schools didn't have the right gear. So this is a good improvisational way to do it.
Yes.
But I think later we should show the vice way too.
Yes, I can show you on the vise. I could show on the grinder, but it's yeah.
Right.
It's but yeah, we can put it in the vise, and that is easier because it's not wobbling about. But yeah, you won't necessarily have this special sharpening chair.
Yeah, it's very special.
Yeah, but so that's the inside done. I mean, we will polish the inside, but it's exactly the same process. It's just with compound on wheels. So, but what I'm going to do now is sharpen the outside face. Right, so we're going to now, we've done the inside enough to get a burr. So at this point, I'd try and cut from the other way to move the burr over, rather than completely finish one face and then do the other face. So what I'm going to do is hit this. As I said, it's got a rounded bevel, but it is actually made up of it's about a 3mm flat bevel, and that's something to follow. If you try and follow a round bevel, it's very difficult, and you really don't know what you're trying to hit. So we've got this flat bevel. What I've found, there's different ways to do it, and I'm not going to say one is better than the other. This is the way that I tend to do it. You could use a Waterstone, and you could be coming like this on it, but I think you'll tend to gouge it quite badly and spend a lot of time flattening your Waterstone afterwards. You were saying, Alex, that you tend to go side to side.
Yeah, I used to, especially the longer handle ones.
Which I think makes sense, and that's going to be less abrasive on the stone and work very well. But this is another method if you don't want to use a Waterstone. It's just a piece of 2x1. I put a slight groove down the centre, which makes it a bit easier to hold the paper onto it. I've got 3 grits I'm going to use. Again, taking big jumps. I'm going to go 600, 1,000, 3,000, because it's actually a very short bevel we're sharpening. I mean, it's only, if this was a knife, you would be sharpening twice the length.
At least, yeah.
It would be 3 times the width, and you'd do both sides. So I can't do a maths. A lot more.
Yeah, that works.
So the actual amount of steel we've got to remove is a lot. So we can get away with taking these jumps and grips. So 600 grips, wrap this round, try and get it tight, but it's not that, it doesn't have to be dead tight. But, get this. What I found is that if I was holding it, if I used a shorter block like this and held it, when I went round, I would tend to, without really concentrating on it or being aware I was doing it, I'd tend to alter the angle because I'd move my wrist as I went round. Whereas if I hold it this way and I put it against my forearm, here it locks it up, so unless I move my elbow I can't change the angle, which I think tends to make it a bit easier. Again, it's something you can experiment with, but this is how I found to do it. So what I want to do is line up the bevel and run round. You can see as I run round I'm not actually changing the angle unless I move my elbow, so it locks it in a lot better. I can see where I've hit there. I'm a little bit tight to the edge, so I'm back a bit. In a few passes like this. The paper would last longer if I used it wet, but it makes a mess, so I'm not going to bother. But it definitely would last longer.
That's another thing I don't like about the Waterstones is huge mess, and every time you need to check your scratch pattern, you got to wipe it off, clean your hands.
Yes, yeah, sometimes.
Quicker and easier the better, I think, because you want to get back to carving.
Yes, and you haven't got to dry it off and worry about if you haven't dried it off, but it rusts. So I can go this way, and immediately I can feel a burr on the inside face. So it means I've hit the edge, which is all I really need to do. Mark up the bevel. Because I went from a very highly polished surface to 600 grit, I could see where I was hitting. Whereas it's very difficult to see the difference in scratch pattern between 600 and 1,000 grit. Whereas if you mark it up, you can see where you're going. So we're just trying to keep this burr as flat as possible. A little bit there and on it there. That's not bad. And I should probably spend longer going over it, but if I wanted to get all the scratch marks out. But as long as I've got it from the edge, that's pretty good. And again, I'll give that back to Alex to do, and we'll go to 3,000 grit, which is The grit I tend to finish on, I've got up to 7,000, but I think if you strop from 3,000 grit, you can get all the scratches out very quickly, so there's not really any need to go any further. Okay, so again, locking it up here. You can hear that the cuts at 3,000 grit, it hisses rather than, you don't hear a sort of scratching noise, it's more of a hiss. And yeah, I've got better at that. I'm lining it up to the bevel. And this is the bit where, see, obviously you do have some give in the wood. I'm not holding paper dead flat, so we're not going to get a perfectly flat bevel. And that's absolutely fine because, as I said, the bevel should match the cut and we want a bit of curve on it. So, but this is the thing which often comes up in sharpening, is that if you try and do, it's hard to describe, you won't necessarily achieve the bevel you think you're going to get. So if I try and get it dead flat, I'll put a little bit of convex on, and that's about right. If I try and put a convex bevel on, I'm going to really round it over so it'll be like a beach ball, and it's never going to cut.
Right.
So it's, yeah, so you need to sort of, if you aim for flat, you'll probably put enough convex on. If you're so amazing you put a perfectly flat bevel on, you can just drop a micro bevel on, so it's not really an issue. But you'd have to be pretty good to work around this and get a really flat bevel. But again, it depends what you're talking about. Flat, I mean, it looks flat, but if you put a straight edge on it and shine the light on it, you'd probably see there's a little bit of light coming under, which is exactly what you want, because it needs to cut round the corner. Well, I say round the corner, inside the curve. So we've done the inside face and we've done the outside face. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start polishing. I'm going to start on the inside because the last one did the outside. And I also went to 3,000 grit on the inside, on the outside, and the inside face is a bit coarser. So I always try and work up to a final finish rather than say do one side completely and then the other side. So we're going to do the inside face. So again, I'm just going to put on a fresh oil. And we're going to strop with this, and I'm going to use the grey, which is the coarsest one, and just apply some grey, working away. Try and get it in the middle, there we go. So that's some compound applied. Same thing, although absolutely you've got to go away from the edge at this point. If you cut into the edge, going to cut into the felt. You could sort of get away with it with a harder wheel like this, but there's no second time to absolutely make sure you're going away from the edge. Polish out, we're aiming to polish out the scratches. That's coming. I'll just apply a little bit more compound in the middle. And yeah, if I wanted to be really, get a perfect finish on it, I worry about polishing this area, but that really doesn't matter. Wood chip's never going to touch that, so I'm just going to be concentrating on the last 5mm. I don't want to concentrate just on the edge because that would mean I'd be pulling it up and rounding the edge, but I certainly don't want to push it this way and concentrate on that area. So, see the wheel's going black now, which is metal particles being cut. It's not perfect, but that will do. And the next stage, we'll get a white one.
So you like to keep the stropping material separated, the grits?
Yeah, you should do. I mean, you could get away with it. They're trying to scratch it off. The way that you you have to really. I was going to say, it's all right to go from a white wheel to a coarser, it's all right to go from a fine compound and put coarser compound on it, because obviously the white compound, the fine scratches aren't going to matter because they're going to be overlaid by the coarse one. But what you can't do is have a coarse compound with bigger bits of abrasive in and then go to finer, because then you're going to get a mixture of scratches.
Right.
So it's a one-way ticket. You can go from white to grey, but you can never go back again. So Yeah, they're not really expensive, so really it's better to have one. You could try and clean the wheel out with a wire brush, but it's, I don't think it's worth
Why
it.
bother? Just get a bunch of them.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it lasts forever, really. The wear is so small on these. I've used ones these size for hundreds, if not thousands, of gouges, and I'm still on the same wheel. So once you have one, it's good. Yeah. So we'll do white. This one's better in a way because you'll see, because you put the white on and it's white, and then as you strop, you see immediately it's going black because it's metal and I still haven't got enough in the middle. And that's just about done. I haven't done the best job on it. If it was a production one, I wouldn't be too happy with this, but the edge is fine. There's still some secondary scratches back here, but as I said, the blade's a wood chip, you're never going to touch it, so that's all right. So we got down to white compound here, which is fine, it's going to go. Got 3,000 grit scratches going this way, which is pretty fine, and it will cut. I mean, I'm sure it's shave hair, but we can still take out 3,000 grit scratches. I'm going to do it the same way as I was doing with the spoon knife. Is I'm going to polish it out, and I don't know. We could go this way, and we can see these black lines appearing where we're cutting steel. You see that beautifully. And yeah, we don't want to consciously round the edge, but we do want to round it bevel. So a lot of downward pressure. You know it's going to round the bevel a bit because it's a thin bevel, but that's fine. The other option, as I say, if you can support it on your wrist, is to come round this way. I don't think it really matters which way you do it. So I suppose you could argue that you could just as well be doing this. But the thing about that is you can't see, at this point you're still trying to keep the bevel flat and you can't see what you're doing as well. Whereas when you're stropping, you are kind of trying to do a final bit of rounding, so it sort of conforms better. But as long as you've made the cut and got back to an edge. And yeah, that's taken out 3,000 grit scratches that quickly because, say, it's a short bevel. So it should be nice and sharp. And yes, I won't make a cut in this, although everything I own has ended up got a little
yes,
in the bottom. You think, oh, never matter. And turn it over and it's cratered.
Well, cool. We could, yeah, we'll get some close-ups
of that cutting. But so that's the basic idea of sharpening. I don't think I touched on sharpening and adze, but same sort of principle really, although this is, depending on whose adze it is, these are often flat enough you don't need a wheel. You can use a bar, because this curve is so slight.
Oh, right.
You really can. But a big wheel going round would give you a...
So you wouldn't really go this way? No, that wouldn't make sense.
I wouldn't. I tend not to do any final finishing parallel to an edge, because I think the scratch pattern should be going into... I don't care if you're going into the edge or away from the edge, but I think if you give a final scratch pattern that way, it's better. If you've got a scratch pattern this way, I can imagine that on a microscopic level, you've got these score lines running along the edge, and you can imagine the whole end of the edge breaking off on like a...
Right.
Like when you've got a Stanley knife, which has got lots of different serrations on the blade, and it snaps off at that score line.
That makes
sense. I
sense.
can imagine the edge would break off at that. I know, I've now got a digital microscope. For a long time, I had a light microscope for a long time, but I refused to use it because I thought if I did, I'd just get obsessed with tiny detail. But now I've got a digital one, I probably will start looking at it more closely. But I'd say I'd always go away from the edge or into it and along it. But I'd say if you are sharpening, this works pretty well on an adze as well, although probably adzes will do another video. But again, you can line it up like this. If you lock to your wrist, and you can follow the bevel around, so you can see same sort of thing.
Same thing. Cool.
And then okay, so this is putting the drill in the vise. It is an easier version of doing it, definitely, but not everybody's got a vise, but if you have, I definitely advise using it. Because I'm going to work down the grits now, I'm going to mark up the
mark up the inside because it's going to be much easier for me to see where I'm hitting. So, again, working away from the edge. That's the inside polished up with no micro bevel on the inside. Cool. Okay, so that's us done. You'll now know how to sharpen a swan neck gouge. I'd like to thank everybody for supporting my work again, Alex for filming, and if you've got any comments or questions, drop it below or check out my website. Okay, thanks. Well, that took its toll, but I've finished. I'd like to thank you all for supporting my work.